Coming to you with two wild beasts behind me that might get very excited with what I'm about to do. It's Wellness Nerd Out time! How you nerds doing? Happy Wellness Nerd Out time, you guys. And today we are going to be talking about vitamin B12 deficiency. So, albeit the phone has fallen because the thing just broke, I'm just going to hold it today and we're going to talk, all right? So when we talk about, what's up, Kippy? And I can see all you guys when you tune in because I'm holding it nice and close. When we talk about vitamin B12 deficiency, well, we talked about some of the benefits and we talked about the dosage and food sources yesterday, right? But when we talk about a deficiency, you know, let's talk about what can go wrong. Let's talk about how, you can get a B12 deficiency not only from not ingesting enough B12 in your diet, not having an adequate intake of it, but you can also get it if you're not able to properly absorb the vitamin B12 when you take it in. And so let's talk about a few examples here of what can go wrong. So I'm going to sit down for a second and get a little more comfortable. So when we talk about what can go wrong, let's start with some neurological things that can happen. And first off, you could get memory loss. You could have vision problems with a deficiency in B12. You could have something called ataxia. And ataxia just means you lose coordination, voluntary coordination. Take it easy. Dogs are crazy. You lose voluntary coordination of your body movements. And so if you can't control your physical movements, well, you can have all sorts of issues ranging from things like speech problems to, not being able to talk properly, to walking issues, right? So that's pretty serious if you can't walk and you can't talk, right? So you got to get your B12, people. That's just another reason, right? On top of that, with a B12 deficiency, you could get something called a peripheral neuropathy. And we've talked about peripheral neuropathy before in When Wellness. And we talked about B6 could be good for it. And I think we said B7 as well. But with a peripheral neuropathy, you get damage to your peripheral nerves. And when we talk about a B12 deficiency, this has especially been noted in damage to the peripheral nerves of your legs, right? Because peripheral neuropathies usually affect our extremities. And the symptoms you get from a peripheral neuropathy are things ranging from burning to numbness and tingling, right? So an example of peripheral neuropathy that we've talked about before is carpal tunnel syndrome, right? Where we're dealing with the median nerve in that case, all right? So any damage or obstruction or interference with the nerve can cause these sorts of problems and symptoms, right, aforementioned. And B12 deficiency, causing these neurological problems, well, they are irreversible much of the time. So you just don't want to get there. You take prophylactic measures to make sure that you're getting adequate amounts of B12 from your diet. So that's why I wanted to emphasize yesterday so much that if you are a vegan, if you are a vegetarian, please for yourself, take a vitamin B12 supplement to avoid things like this. It could be very serious. All right. Now, when we talk about some other things that could go wrong, well, you could get infertility from vitamin B12 deficiency. And, this infertility, however, is not as serious as the neurological problems we just mentioned, because the infertility can be reversed with the reintroduction of vitamin B12 into your diet, into your system. And so it is reversible, once again, is infertility caused by vitamin B12 deficiency. Now, Danny, I know I'm going to talk about this. So even if you get adequate amounts of B12, and you can't absorb B12, you can have a B12 deficiency. So yesterday we said that when you absorb vitamin B12, when you take it in as B12 or cobalamin, right, known as such because it contains the element cobalt, when you take in cobalamin, it has to be absorbed through the intestines and converted to methylcobalamin in its active form to have its effects on your body, right? Its beneficial effects. And so if we cannot properly absorb it, we don't get this methylcobalamin in active form. Now, the inability to absorb it could come in a few ways. All right, so let's go from the top. So when we take that food in, right, which is, say clams or liver, because they were the highest sources far and away of B12, right? Other than that, meat, poultry, things like that, animal products, milk, eggs. When we take, and fish and shellfish, if you weren't with us yesterday, when we take in the B12 and ingest it, and it starts going through our alimentary canal or our digestive tract, right? Well, when we get to the stomach, that vitamin B12 has to bind to a protein called intrinsic factor. We could abbreviate it IF. And IF is produced by your parietal cells, which are contained in the lining of your stomach, in the gastric wall. So this lining again contains parietal cells, this lining of the stomach, that produce intrinsic factor, which is a protein that binds to vitamin B12 and allows it to travel to the intestines and be absorbed through the intestines to become methylcobalamin and have its active effects on your body. So what if we had an autoimmune attack on intrinsic factor protein? Well, then we couldn't bind to B12, and downstream we're in trouble. We're not absorbing B12. What if we had an autoimmune attack on the parietal cells themselves that produce intrinsic factor? Well, then we run into the same problem. And we could also have an issue called atrophic gastritis, where we have a weakened stomach lining, a weakened wall in the stomach, you could say, in simple. And this could lead to a B12 deficiency as well. So whether it be an autoimmune attack on intrinsic factor itself or the parietal cells that produce it, or issues with the stomach lining, right? An atrophic gastritis, right? Atrophic, what does that mean? When you get atrophy, your muscles get smaller and weaker. So it makes sense that atrophic gastritis, because something gastric is related to the stomach, right? Itis usually just means inflammation in medical terminology, and although it's poorly used a lot of the time. And so it makes sense that it's a weakened stomach lining with atrophic gastritis, right? But whether it is, again, autoimmune or atrophic gastritis, any of these issues, well, this could lead to something called pernicious anemia, which is a B12 deficiency suffered because of what we had just mentioned, because of these causes, right? Because of those autoimmune attacks, because your B12 in simple or atrophic gastritis, B12 is not binding intrinsic factor, and so it can't be absorbed. And so pernicious anemia can cause a B12 deficiency, even if you have sufficient amounts of B12 in your diet. Now, you'll also see something that's worth mentioning called congenital pernicious anemia, where the baby can't produce sufficient amount of intrinsic factor and so can't bind B12 and can't properly absorb it. And so they could have a B12 deficiency. Albeit, even though it was worth mentioning, that is rare, congenital pernicious anemia. And usually pernicious anemia comes on no earlier than age 30, and the average age of diagnosis for pernicious anemia is 60 years old. So it comes on a little bit later in life, people. Just a few more reasons to get your vitamin B12. I've been sitting here just kicking it. My thing broke. But I still had a great time with you guys. Thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great... Yeah! Yeah! Danny Kemp! Danny Kemp is here! Come here! Come here! Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Danny Kemp just showed up and came from New Hampshire.
I heard you talking about B12, so I had
Yeah!
to go.
What's up, dude? Oh my God, Danny Kemp's so happy! This one is for Danny, 100 billion%. My dogs are super excited.
Hey, babe.
I don't think I've ever been that excited in my entire life. That was great. greatest moment. Dude, I love you so much. That is all we got for B12. Now you got to see Danny's beautiful face on When Wellness here. It was great hanging out with him. I'm going to go hang out with him for a lot longer right now. Not on When Wellness. We're going to have some great quality time together. And, dude, thank you so much for making the trip.
Absolutely.
I love you.
Yeah, I got you, man. It's for the fans.
Dude.
It's for the fans.
Yeah. This guy's the best, man. A great human
And
being
for your
right
birthday.
here. Thank
Since
you,
it
brother.
was your birthday the other day.
Yeah, hey, I'm 30 now. 30. We're getting old, but when wellness never will, my fine feathered friends. You have a fantastic rest of your night. The things about the fall, that's what I usually film it on, but it broke. And we'll see you tomorrow, folks. Enjoy your night. Thank you so much. This was the craziest When Wellness ever, and maybe the greatest.